A lot of people don't realize that essentially government and nations also follow like individuals, the Maslow's hierarchy triangle. Many good things have indeed happened, but we should always be cognizant of the fact that we are still only at around roughly $3,000 per capita. That's still very low. Okay, great, we are sending Mars mission, amazing, wonderful, we are building this, we are building that, fantastic. But at the end of the day, my children cannot breathe in this city. The water that I'm putting in my mouth, I don't know whether it's safe. Should we build an entire community in Nicobar Islands, including a military base? And in my argument would be, yes, I think we should definitely make an attempt because...
Namaste, Hindol.
Namaste.
Welcome back to Rishihood.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Always
and
a pleasure to come
all the
back.
students love you after your interactions here.
Kind.
So I thought I should ask you a few questions around because you have been with government or quasi-government for quite some time and you have a perch in Delhi to see how things are happening.
Yeah.
And we have been discussing the India story for some time, right?
Sure.
We have been discussing rising India for some time, right? Do you think any of that story has changed in the sense that do you see with the recent mandate, has the trajectory changed in any way? Are we on the same path? What do you assess of the recent changes?
No, look, I mean, Shobit, you and I have discussed this in the past. A lot of people don't realize that essentially government and nations also follow like individuals, the Maslow's hierarchy triangle, right? Mm-hmm. You cannot tell a nation or people in a nation at subsistence level that they should think of grand ideas. Ye nahi hota hai. This cannot be done, right? I think we have risen quite a way up that ladder, which is why questions of identity, all of this has come up, right? And what should India project to the world and all of this, right? Having said that, we should always be cognizant that while great things have indeed happened, and our fintech revolution is a great example of that. I still remember going to Buenos Aires as a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, where this guy from China gave us a presentation of the sales that happens via fintech, using phones on Boxing Day, right? The biggest day of in China. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. We don't have this here. And lo and behold, within 2-3 years we did, right? And it has exploded to a level that it's bigger than any other country in the world. So many good things have indeed happened, but we should always be cognizant of the fact that we are still only at around roughly $3,000 per capita. That's still very low, Shobit. For us to aspire to greatness at this level of income, I mean, we should of course aspire, but we should always be cognizant that a lot of manipulation in our society is still very, very possible at very low spends. So I'll give you an example. See, this whole caste thing is back once again, right? And in Uttar Pradesh, where I lived for a bit, I'm back in Delhi now, but I lived in Uttar Pradesh for a bit. There was a real sense that we have been able to overcome some parts of it because of a particular aspirational glue. But this seems to be crumbling once again in many parts. And that's because if a large number of your people still are at 100 rupees, 200 rupees per day income, there is only so much that they will think beyond their livelihood. And if they don't get that livelihood, for them to make the next leap of faith in their mind to think about the nation and do big things, and that's tough. And I'll say this at both you and I are extremely privileged as people in India at our sort of demographics level. But I feel that at a particular level too, 14 years have gone by and my family has waited for one apartment that the JP Wishtown in Noida has not been able to deliver. Government after government has gone by, and I'm not the only one. 25,000 families are stuck there. But that's a very small example of how not only the poor, but even the middle class feels frustrated. I was just telling your students today that we talk a lot about startups, and it's an amazing thing what has happened in startups under Prime Minister Modi. But look at this angel tax issue. I mean, I used to be a journalist. I feel like we've spent, a decade talking, more than a decade, 15 years talking about this angel tax issue. Right? So many of these things, unless they're targeted and sorted, at some point people will, vocalize them. I think that's what's happening in our cities, right? What is happening is people are now saying, okay, great, we are sending Mars mission, amazing, wonderful, we are building this, we are building that, fantastic. But at the end of the day, my children cannot breathe in this city. at the end of the day, the water that I'm putting in my mouth, I don't know whether it's safe. So all of these are basically baseline problems. Yesterday only I was tweeting, Ernest Gellner used to say that modern nationalism and the city are irretrievably intertwined. Because in a city, a lot of your other identities fall away, right? You're not from this village, this community, all of that. In a city, you think, where will my children go to school? Are my roads good? Is my sewage good? All of that, right? All of this, unless we fix at a baseline level, there will be problems ahead, right? This is not to say, again, that vast improvements have not happened. But I think today we are again at a position where some leaps in terms of governance will have to be delivered quickly for people to regain that, ability to imagine further.
Interesting to know you compared it to the Maslow's hierarchy at the national level as well.
Yes.
And you're kind of saying that we'll have to recalibrate. Maybe we went too far ahead on the higher side, but we'll have to fix the fundamentals before we go there.
Yeah.
But this is immensely difficult for a policymaker, right? So how do you set the narrative?
Yeah.
How do you prioritize? Because it's called India 1, India 2, India 3, right?
Correct.
And there are different levels of the Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
They have different aspirations. We have the same students here coming from different backgrounds. So if you would sit in the policymaker shoes, what would you prioritize? Where would you invest on?
So look, it's very clear to me, like, for instance, if you were in the MEA today, you would have to think of India as a great power. Because that's your planning for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Correct.
In policy, you're not thinking about the next 5 years. You have to plan, especially at the bureaucracy level, for the next 50 years, right? And you would then, therefore, you would have to ask hard questions. For instance, look at this Andaman and Nicobar Islands thing, right?
Yeah.
Should we build an entire community in Nicobar Islands, including a military base? And in my argument would be, yes, I think we should definitely make an attempt because it's a very strategic location. We will need that. The way China is expanding, this will be invaluable for us. But again, if you go to Nicobar, the real challenges of the local people and the environmental crisis, that is all very real.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is not to be easily dismissed in a throwaway tweet. Right? Yeah. So can we find a balance? And it's a hard problem. There's no magic wand to solve such a problem.
Yeah.
Having said that, if I were, for instance, not in the MEA, in other ministries, say in health and education, look, it's quite clear that some sort of a deeper, and I use the word deeper very consciously, deeper welfare state would have to be built. We are not creating enough jobs to employ everybody. Yeah. My friend Manish Sabarwal talks about this all the time. That actually there's a job available for everybody in India, but is it a job that pays enough, right? That's the question.
Yeah.
But that's, as you would recognize, is a productivity problem.
Yeah.
It's not an availability problem,
yeah.
right? So that productivity will only happen when we ensure that, at some level, the basics are fueled.
Yeah.
So I was going to write an editorial, maybe I still will, called Ram Rajya as a welfare state. Maybe Narulya should write Jagannath Dham as a welfare state. But it's very clear that some sort of deeper welfare state, and actually Narendra Modi has already started building a vast welfare state.
Yeah.
I remember in 2012-13 when these conversations began, a lot of people said, no, he's a capitalist. And I always argued, including in my ORF papers and stuff, that he's not a capitalist. None of the things he's done till now suggests he's a capitalist. He obviously wants certain kinds of firms to push India's economy forward, but fundamentally, no politician in India can purely be a capitalist. We will need a welfare state for a long time. And with the disruption that's coming in AI, it'll be inevitable, we should not be surprised if even middle-class people require some sort of, in India, we all, especially the middle-class things that, what do I have to do with government? I don't send my children to public schools. I don't even use public infrastructure, maybe only a road. I drill water straight from the underground, mostly illegal. But we are coming to a place where the disruption in AI will be so big that many people who do not think in terms of welfare will fundamentally move towards thinking about welfare.
Interesting. You said it depends on the ministry that you are, and all ministries are important. I mean,
Yes.
if we would have ignored urban affairs, or we
Yes.
would have ignored education,
Yeah.
right, and would have focused more on foreign affairs
Yeah.
or defense. But you're saying that the foreign affairs has to do its own thing,
Yeah.
and the city affairs has to do its own thing, right?
Yeah, like look at education.
Yeah,
Education, because you mentioned education. Right? We are not able to compete even with Vietnam.
Yeah.
Why is that? We are not able to compete with Vietnam because the standard of primary education in Vietnam far supersedes ours.
Yes.
The Chinese are more productive than us, not only because they are in an authoritarian state, that is part of the reason, but it's also, we cannot deny that their primary education system is far stronger.
Yeah.
Today, we have come to a point, in the early phases of your career and mine, you will remember we used to discuss how to fix the enrollment problem.
Yeah.
Not enough children were even getting enrolled in school.
Yes.
Today, we have fixed the enrollment problem, but the quality of output problem we haven't fixed, right? So the kids go to school, but what they're learning, and can they do basic sums, and can they do basic, cognitive thinking? Question mark in many places.
Okay. And given that we are speaking about education and continuing that for Rishihood particularly, just last year, the whole buzz was about startups, right?
Yeah.
We talk about startups, unicorns,
Yeah.
and we are leading the world. And because I speak to parents all the time, and I'm just coming out of a parent counseling session, the questions now are all about jobs, right? Employment, unemployability, right? These type of questions. So if you would have to give advice to a 18-year-old
Yeah.
getting into higher education, I mean, both about how should they think about their education, what should they prepare for, and India or out of India as well, which is a big question, right? I mean, that is also a debate that happens, that is this country going to fulfill my ambitions, or should I think of something else? Because it's a question that I get all the time. And because you have such a vast lens, I want to know from you, what would be your advice?
So number one, about going abroad, let's tackle that part first. Look, it's undoubtedly true that in certain universities, certain places in the world, education systems are very, very good. You really get a wonderful perspective, and there might be jobs. But parents should be cognizant, and students should be cognizant, that the number of such places in the world are actually shrinking, they're not growing. So that great American dream is far more complicated today than it used to be, even 10 years ago. In fact, even countries like Australia, which were relatively simple, again, today is more complicated than they used to be, right? The world is fracturing, racism will rise, and the jobs that people dream of, once they land there, they might find, as many children who go to Canada today are finding, they may spend 20, 30, 40 lakhs to go and study in Canada, but Canada may not be able to give them the jobs. In fact, Canada may not be able to give them jobs which pay for housing, which is not a big crisis in Canada.
Yes.
Right? So I am not dissuading anybody from taking an international route. But today, if you go to an international destination and study in some obscure third tier or second tier college, what your life will be after that education? Question mark. So you should think very carefully what this degree is going to get me at the end of it, right? Unless you have so much money that you just want the experience, and that's fine.
Okay.
But that's a very small number of people, right? Most people would like to encash that degree in terms of livelihood, right? That is big question mark, right? Even the UK, again, a classic place. What job you will get in London? See, again, Indian students also have a very narrow and I think a very classist point of view. When they go to the UK, they never think that, okay, I will really explore this country. I will go work in Edinburgh. They all want to live in London, and that too zone 1, zone 2. But those jobs are not there, Shobit, I mean, how many people will get a great job at the City of London, right? And be able to get a apartment or whatever in zone 1, zone 2. If they were to really open their minds and say, okay, maybe Northern England, I can do something interesting. Maybe Scotland, maybe Wales, all of that, right? There might be opportunities which might be interesting. But people don't think like that. About people who are going to work in India, I actually think we should not give up on this startup's dream at all. we really need this startup dream. Because without this startup dream, simple, old school, formal jobs, we will not have enough. Right? And let's be honest, not everybody can make money as an influencer.
Yeah.
So, those jobs are not going to be available. I would really urge people to think. I gave an example today to your students. This wonderful company which I've been tracking for nearly a decade now called Two Brothers Organic. These two guys who basically are the children of farmers, and they're older than us, maybe a few years older than us, but not hugely older than us, maybe in their early 50s or something like that, right? They basically left their corporate job at about maybe 35, 40 or whatever, and they came back to their farm in Bodhani and have built a business. Nikhil Kamath has just put money in their business, $7 million. And they've built a global business of a few $1 million of selling agrarian produce processed at the farm level. So I buy ghee from them.
Wow.
Very good A2 ghee, And because of ship rocket and delivery, within 2 days it comes. From Bodhani to my home in Delhi, it's just 2 days, right?
Nice.
People should look at, we have a very large country. People should look at opportunities across the country.
Yeah.
They shouldn't only say, Acha, I now want a job only in Bangalore. It may not be available, but for all you know, there are companies building new offices, new opportunities in a place like Bhubaneswar, a city I like very much. There might be opportunities there. If you get fixated that I will not move out of Bombay, Bangalore, fitto there's a problem. So I would really like people to explore the length and breadth of the country. There's another business you would be familiar with, Shobit, which I really like. Alia Bhatt finally, invested in it, called Phool. Again, from an IIT, a couple of IIT guys. And they were from Kanpur, and they saw that huge amount of temple flowers were being discarded. So they put up a small processing plant, and they began to process these temple flowers and make them into agarbattis, into organic gulal, all kinds of things. I was a huge hit. Their company is doing really well now. Alia Bhatt has put money, so she's become the brand ambassador and so on and so forth. So again, it's based out of Kanpur.
Nice.
These two IIT guys and very simple guys. You can see that they probably come from very simple backgrounds, were very studious, got into an IIT and came back and did something in the place where they lived using an idea which was around them. Right? See, if people still think they'll get very traditional jobs, some may, but many won't.
Yeah.
And there are only so many people that consultancies can hire. A lot of these kids now think that, okay, I will join a big four consultancy.
Yeah.
But how many people will those consultancies hire? 100, 200, 10,000? What about the rest of them? So I really think people should look at new ways and new ideas. Some of this is happening in Goa. My sister now lives in South Goa, so I go there quite frequently. I see many young people going there and figuring new things to do, whether it's food. The other day I met somebody who's running a very interesting boutique design firm, right, out of Goa, and has hired a few. Again, Goa is a place that a lot of creative people go to, has a nice network, and is able to deliver design solutions at a far less price because they're in Goa, compared to, say, a big Bombay firm, who will charge, exponentially more. So it's getting clients from around the board.
Interesting.
So I'm saying we have to find new ideas of doing things, right? And your students should not all, just to say this in a fun way, they should even look around Sonipat to see because at least it's a growing city, right? What all they can do and not instantly move towards Delhi.
Interesting. So you're saying globally the world is getting fractured. That's one thing I heard.
Oh, for sure.
And with that, consequently, racism would be on the rise.
Yeah.
And not everybody can bet long term because you don't know how things will pan out. Yeah. But you still think India is a land of opportunities, but we'll have to think outside the traditional things that people have been thinking, right? Beyond the metros and beyond the traditional businesses that we know, there could be many new things to be done.
Absolutely. I'll give you one example. I was giving it to your students. Think about it. Even till 5 years ago, the best whiskies in the world were all from the West. They were broadly Scottish and some very big names in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Today, some of the best whiskeys in the world are all Indian.
Wow.
Right? They are all made by Indian companies. In fact, such has been the sales of Indian whiskey that big companies like Diageo and others are today making whiskeys in India.
Wow.
Right? I know of a huge number of people, all kinds of places in Sikkim and this and that, who are making, very good quality gin from Indian botanicals. Because we have, you and I know that India is a huge botanical thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that we have never thought that botanicals could be used as gin.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? All these years we used to always think, okay, Phool hai, kuch karenge, whatever, right? But clearly these guys have thought, oh, why not? You go to Scotland and you see juniper and this, that and the other. Why not with ours? So they're making some great stuff, which I'm just saying there's a lot of ways in which people are doing new things, right? And I think one has to think out of the box and not go in this, in the same straight-jacketed manner.
Okay. That's good advice. Thanks.
No, and also I think, because I mentioned Sonipat, Sonipat is a growing educational hub.
Yes, it is.
The other day somebody was showing me photographs that a whole, luxury township or city is coming up and this, that and the other.
Yeah.
There could be so many opportunities right next door here which are opening up, which maybe your students who are only looking at Bangalore, Delhi and Mumbai are not even spotting.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right? So therefore, I think it's healthy to, really keep your minds open.
Thank you, Hindol. Thank you for your times.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for sharing your thoughts. It's genuinely differently. It's very valuable advice to our students, I'm sure. So we'll
Thank you.
continue.
Thanks
this
a lot.
conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.